Okay, this will be the final video for the Ross Gay poem, and then I'll have the prompt following it. And the prompt for today will ask you to consider some of the comments that have been made within the videos. So if you haven't watched the first two, please do so, as they will be building off one another as we go forward. So one of the questions I want to return to is how the poem is confusing. And I agree, it requires us to kind of pay attention to it and look at it in many different ways. And the question that I've written down over here is, actually it's a statement. It's a statement. And I say, my statement is, perhaps we need confusion to get to clarity. Okay, perhaps we need confusion to arrive at clarity. So I'm going to ask you to think about that in your responses later today for your journal. So that'll be something to return to as we go forward. And I'm curious about if you think that's true or not. We ended here, drizzled in the simplest of joys, right? This honey image from drizzled coming back to the honeybee here. So everything's connecting, right? It's associative, meaning that it's jumping back and forth into different spaces, using imagery to move into the next one. And in this space, it becomes drizzled in simplest of joys. And he says that in this world where we live, okay, that we have spaceships and subatomic, and doesn't give us particles, this and that. So he uses these generalities as well. But he's not trying to say that I understand all the science. He's saying that we live in a world that has both spaceships, that we can go explore the cosmos, and it also we have the knowledge of science to understand that we have subatomic particles as sort of quantum physics. So to the infinitesimally small, to the cosmically massive, in this world, in this universe in which he lives, 2, maybe 3 times a day some days, I have the distinct pleasure of slowly untethering from the one side from the other. Okay, so this is a word that I think is important. And I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of research on this one particular word, because this is a word, again, like joy, where we find ourselves understanding it without really understanding it. We know what pleasure is. It doesn't confuse us. But as soon as I say pleasure, you're going to picture something that I'm not entirely sure that this is what the poem is dealing with. And we want to have some clarity of purpose with that one. Remember that when we write about a poem, we write about any text, the goal is to teach it to the person reading it in a way that they get a better understanding of not only the poem, but what the poem utilizes. So this is an idea, all right? We're going to work on an idea to see if we can't find something to kind of back this up. So in this world where everything is massive and everything is tiny, and there are car bombs and there's honey, all of these disparity things, everything doesn't really seem to add up. What a strange hodgepodge of existence. In this world, he still has this time, 2 or 3 times a day sometimes, some days, to untether one side from the other, right? To take things apart, okay? And then to put them back together. What a beautiful, it's a metaphor, right? At this point of trying to understand the world. Can I understand car bombs? Maybe, right? Maybe I can see where people are coming from with this one, but I can't really control that. That's not the narrative I can control. What can I control? This, right? This here, my space, my space. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus would once said that the only true power that we have is saying yes. In other words, I can control my universe by what I agree to do and what I don't agree to do. So if I was writing about this one, I might take it like from a Stoic perspective, just to kind of play with that a little bit. So he says of slowly untethering the one side, which is like unbuckling a stack of vertebrae with delicacy. How do you unbuckle a stack of vertebrae? I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know that it's a literal image. I don't think that it is. Maybe it is. Maybe you have a literal reading of this one. Maybe you're pre-med and you're like, of course, when you unbuckle the vertebrae. I have no idea. But for me, it's this. It moves us into the body, right? And it keeps the language of garment, right? Language of clothing, in a stack of vertebrae, right? To unbuckle those. It's an image of being taken apart from the self, from the skeletal system, right? It says that the one thing is like the other. What we wear is like what we are. I love that idea. But he does it with delicacy. Because when we do this, when we take our shirts off, we must use only the tips of my fingers, right? Our identity right here. This is how they find our identity, right? So our dexterity and our identity are here. That's how you are known. Okay. When you go in, if you were arrested, they don't take they take a picture of your face, but they identify you here. Okay. So your fingers are important. They matter to you. And he says, and he looks at his fingers, which I must only use the tips of my fingers, with which I will one day close my mother's eyes. I mean, and he recognizes that the same things that keep our shirts buttoned, the same things that allow us to build a car bomb or to protect ourselves against a car bomb, all of these things, the thing that allows me to use my pen or to type up my response paper or to hold my son, right, are the same things that allow me to eat a cheeseburger, to make a fist, or to one day, close my mother's eyes after she has died. This is all happening here in my hands. And in the pandemic, it feels even more important, right? This pressure of wash these hands, the amount of information that they carry, right? Diseases or germs, all of these things, the amount of things that these can do, the damage that they can do, and the beauty that they can bring. I mean, can you imagine the power of this, right? The power of what these hold. How much damage can be done, how much beauty can be made. You don't have, any of our art museums without this, right? You don't have any musicians without this. I mean, that's not true, right? That's a bit of a generalization, but there's no piano player, there's no piano without this, right? And there's no assault rifles without this. So these can do both, right? Now, of course, it's here, it's us, it's our imagination that does it, but it's here that it gets carried out. Action versus thought, okay? What the poem is dealing with, these opposites. This is as delicate as we can be in this life. Practicing like this, practice. Everything we do is practice. And this is a beautiful moment in this poem for me, where every gesture is practice. Every handshake you do, when you get to do them again, is practice. Practice for connection, practice for being with somebody else, practice with making yourself part of another person's life. It's all of that. Just like when we give the raft of our hands, like this, to the clumsy spider, and blowing soft until she lifts her damp heft and crawls off, right? We can also be so delicate as to hold a spider and just let her leave. But we could also, right, the opposite then becomes true. We could also just go ahead and kill that spider just as quickly, because it's up to you. It's act. It's saying, yes, what will I do? Pushing the seed into the earth, which is a burial image and a life image, right? Putting the seed into the earth, which we use with our finger, a gardening image. Like this, first in the morning, putting a shirt on, then at night, taking it off. We practice sliding the bones home. And the bones, right, this could be sort of an old understanding of how buttons would have originally been made from bone, and they would have been how they go home in this space, but also the bones of the body when we come back up here, like a stack of vertebrae. And again, delicacy throughout. So I think, to me, the poem is an ode. It's a song of joy to not just the buttoning and unbuttoning of our shirt, which of course it is, but it's about what we can do with our hands. Quite literally, what we do with our hands, and as such, what we can do with our imaginations, what we can conjure up that these things can do. Right? And there's so many sayings about this too, like idle hands at the devil's workshop. I mean, the idea being that, like, you have so much potential in this. And it, just as interestingly enough, you can find pure joy in taking your shirt off. Taking your shirt off and putting it back on by buttoning it. If you pay attention to the amount of effort it takes you to do it and how honed that has become for you. Just as you can imagine somebody delicately putting together a car bomb or being delicately ripped apart because of it. There is so much in this world that has the potential for joy and the potential for destruction. And it all comes down to how you, right, and I use what we're given. Not just our hands, but our imaginations, right? Our presence in the world. So yes, you can go and you can pay attention to the world and you can build your bombs and you can use your weapons and you can do all these other things that are on the positive side of the spectrum. You can hold children that should probably be your own. You can just hold random children, right? You can do all this because of the way you've been designed. And you can know how joyful that is just by paying attention when you do the small things. That's what we should do, he says. Pay attention to the small things. Here's what I'd like you to do, and I'll put this in the prompt as well, but do we need confusion to get to clarity? How does that happen? How does this poem help us understand that confusion, the way that it's written, the way that it goes through everything with associative leaps, how does that confusion help us arrive to clarity? What is required of us? to go from that confusion to that clarity. Anyway, I hope some of this is clarified for you. I hope the poem opened up a little bit. I hope you liked his book, or his poem. The title of that book is Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude. It's a beautiful text, and I highly recommend it to anybody looking for a little bit of joy in their lives. It's a very positive book. So if you are interested in reading something that'll maybe be a little bit uplifting right now, it's a fantastic text. It covers every kind of content from race relations to gardening. So a lot of good stuff in there. You can find it on Amazon, or you can order it through his website. Thank you all very much. Please let me know if there's something more that you need with these poems or these texts. Other than that, I look forward to hearing from you today during office hours. Have a good morning.